what does freedom mean to you, and what would it take for you to actually be free? That's a question I've been asking myself. And we arrived at this question because of financial freedom. And what does financial freedom actually mean? What is it? Along the way, I've realized that financial freedom is kind of surface level freedom. It's not what you actually want. What you want is the things that it allows you. So, because we live in a financial world, and finance, money. What is money? What do we say the three functions of money are? It's as a medium of exchange, it's a unit of account, and supposed to be a store of value. But with inflation, how well does it actually perform that third function? So let's just say unit of account, medium of exchange being the main thing when we talk about freedom, because it is a means to an end. So the money purchases the things that you actually want. So what freedoms does money actually get you? Well, let's say it gives you freedom of movement. So you can move around where you want to go when you have money for petrol or a bus ticket or a plane ticket, depending on the level we're talking about. But let's just say once you have a certain amount of money, you can purchase a car, purchase a vehicle. You can move from point A to point B in relative comfort and speed. That's the most important thing, speed. I'll get back to why that's important. So that's one thing that the money can grant you, that freedom of movement. Another thing that it can get you is freedom of opportunity. Freedom of opportunity is really just the ability to say no to things you don't want to do. So if you have a certain amount of money in the bank, let's say you're between jobs, if you have, say, a reserve that can last you for the next 12 months, where you won't need to work, but you have this amount of money that you can survive, or that it will uh, let you survive for the next 12 months, you can live off it, then you have the luxury to turn down jobs that don't interest you until you find the one that does interest you. So you have some capacity, some freedom of opportunity when you have a reserve of money, right? So you can say no to things. Or if, let's say you're not an employee, let's say you are a business owner, you can say no to projects that don't align with your personal values, your ethics, your morals. You can say no to clients that, want to put you in a position or that you're not really interested in, right? Whereas if you don't have the money, sometimes you have to say yes to things that you don't want to do or things that you are not morally aligned with. That's one of the things that happens if you don't have freedom of opportunity. So a certain amount of money also gets you a certain amount of freedom of opportunity. Of course, there are other things that give you freedom of opportunity, such as stacking your skills. So if you have a lot of skills, you can say no to certain things because someone else is going to scoop you up because you're attractive in that market, because you're so skilled. But that's one of them things. Freedom of movement, freedom of opportunity. What else do you get? You get freedom of association. So once you have a certain amount of money, again, you can associate with people that you want to associate with. Doesn't necessarily have to be forced upon you to deal with certain people, because you can, again, similar to freedom of opportunity, you can be like, yeah, nah, I don't need to mess with those guys. Why? Well, what are they gonna give me that, I can't get somewhere else? Or, if you are not aligned morally, why do it? If you don't have freedom of or financial freedom, Sometimes you have to associate with people who might be a little grimy, who might not, be your cup of tea because they have access to the money or they're part of the network that gets you access. So, freedom of association. And the biggest thing I think money gets you is your time. You can purchase your time back. You can buy back your leisure. You can, reduce the amount of time that certain things take. Remember when I said speed with vehicles? One thing buying a car definitely does, as opposed to riding the bus, is it shortens your commute, which means you can get to work faster. You can also get back home faster and chillax for a bit longer than you would if you were stuck on a bus. And that applies to a lot of things when it comes to time. You can afford to pay for express shipping when you have money. You can afford to take a flight rather than take a coach or a train to somewhere. You can fly first class. So, in flying first class, you're more comfortable, and that means probably less jet lagged than if you were flying economy. So you have less recovery time to deal with. You're feeling fresh as soon as you get off the plane. I don't know if that's the case. I've never flown first class, but I assume that's one of the benefits of flying first class. You get to enjoy the time on the plane because it's comfortable, and also your recovery time once you get to your destination is probably shorter because you've had a more comfortable flight. That's my assumption anyway. So you're able to compress time when you have money. So time, opportunity, association. What was the other thing? Oh, movement. Yeah. So these are just some of the freedoms that you can access when you have financial freedom. Okay, so that's those are the things that I want, right? These are the things. Oh, and also you have the freedom to create in some sense. So if you have financial freedom, you can also, I don't know, create babies. You can have 3, 4, 5 kids if you want. Well, I mean, depending on the age of you and your spouse, right? But you have that freedom to do that because you have that extra capacity to, pay for whether it's fertility and child rearing and university, college, private school. You have that capacity once you have financial freedom to build more. So that could be building more family, building a bigger house, building a bigger business. So it's also for that freedom of creation, I suppose you can call it. And what is your freedom figure? Freedom figure being what is the amount that you would need to be free? How do you calculate your freedom figure? Well, first of all, you have to figure out how much it is that you need in a year. So, if we're talking about the expenditure, your normal expenditure, so housing, transport, food, utilities, Wi Fi, phone, all those normal things. Okay, we've got our baseline. That is how much you need to make in order to cover your expenses. That's your break even. So, break even, you're doing okay. You might not necessarily be free because you have to make a certain amount to cover all these expenses, and you don't really have much leeway if you say lose your job or you don't have a good month with your business. You're kind of stuck in a way. So okay, we've broken even. Now we need to create a little bit of headroom. We need to make some profit so we can have some breathing space. All right, we do that, and then maybe there's a little bit of lifestyle creep. You go on more holidays, you travel a bit more, you maybe upgrade your vehicle. So what does that come with? It comes with increased expenses of maintenance and flight tickets and what do you call them? Uh, Hotel accommodation. You're paying for these things. So okay, break even, lifestyle creep. So anyway, you need to have some headroom. So what is that figure where you would have enough for a little bit, emergencies? Maybe say if you didn't get any work for the next 6 months, how much would you need to earn on top of your break even figure and your kind of lifestyle amount where you've rewarded yourself? There should also be a certain amount that you've put away for a rainy day. And for me, I think that figure per annum is probably something like 100,000 pounds, probably. Now, you take that annual amount and you multiply it by 25, and that's your actual freedom figure. So 100,000 times 25, that's 2.5 million pounds. Why 2.5 million pounds? Because once you have that amount of money, or once you have that net worth, you are able to put that money into assets that will then generate that that amount that you need each year. So we're assuming a 4% interest rate. So if you get 2.5 million and it generates 4% per annum, that's $100,000, where you can spend that money without touching the principal. So you can spend the interest without touching the principal of 2.5 million. And that is how you're supposed to live. That's the golden rule. Never sell the principal, live off the interest. So you need to make, well, in my case, you need to make 2.5 million to then have 100,000 each year, where I'm probably not spending the whole 100,000. More likely, let's say we're spending about 55, 60, maybe 65,000. Actually, no. Let's say we're spending 75,000 and 25,000 is put away for that rainy day stuff. Maybe 50 grand is like the lifestyle, well, not lifestyle, but the life essentials. Another 25 is lifestyle stuff, maintenance on vehicles, purchasing cars, holidays, all that stuff. And then the other 25 is rainy day, because that would sustain you for the next 6 months. 25 grand. Yeah, if my calculations are right, if I'm saying I spend 50 per year, then 25 would be 6 months, which is the rainy day amount. So yes, 2.5 million would be the freedom figure for me. 2.5 million pounds. So now the issue is, how do we get to that freedom figure? Gonna have to stack some skills. So what are the things that I'm doing to try to get to that amount right now? Well, at the moment, my big thing is upskilling. So because I'm in finance, what are the things that I want to do? I want to be able to better analyze financial risk, investments, asset management. That's my current goal. What do I want to do? First of all, at the moment, I'm doing a Google Data Analytics Professional Certificate. That's so I'm better able to process, manipulate data, which is important when you're in the financial world. The next thing I want to do is project management, because to get to the leadership roles, you have to know about project management, how to get a project from point A to point B, or from A to Z rather. finishing that off, being able to communicate with your project members and coordinating things so that something gets done. That's also important. Next thing, I'm looking at AI product management. So knowing how to engineer prompts, because this is where the world is going. Being able to, manage a product that has AI components. These are three things that I think can apply to any role, really: data analytics, project management, and product management with some AI. Doesn't matter what industry you're in. I think those are probably some important things to have. And then if we get into more role specific things, then looking at quant and financial risk management, and then ultimately the CFA designation, CFA charter holder. And I think these are skills that will help get me to my freedom figure. Why do we want this freedom? Just want to be able to, relax a little bit. That's the whole idea. To be able to just take a breath and not be stressed, and be able to say no to certain things that I don't want to do. That's really all freedom means to me, man. To be able to say no, and then also to be able to create and bring some life into this world and do the things that I want to do. That's pretty much it. What does freedom mean to you? That's the question I leave you with for today. And what is your freedom figure? All right.